Have you ever wondered how a Spanish learner can be so certain that they are fluent in Spanish? I know I have, and I've definitely asked myself this question many times. How do I know if I am fluent in Spanish? Now, if you have watched some of the videos on my channel, then maybe you're saying to yourself, well, Joshua, you have taken that one LPE exam when you were in college, right? And that's how you know that you are fluent in Spanish. Yes, that is correct. That is what I thought back in 2019, right when I was graduating college, because this LPE exam is what I needed to fulfill my second language requirement. And within this LPE exam, it evaluated the student's ability to read and listen at the intermediate high level as defined by ACTFL, and to write and speak at the intermediate mid-level as defined by ACTFL for most languages. So after taking 3 semesters of college Spanish classes at a fairly big university, I definitely thought that I was fluent in Spanish. But soon after passing this exam, I went to Mexico, and this was my first time ever traveling to a Spanish-speaking country. I felt very confident before going there, but when I actually got there and I tried to communicate, I definitely found out really quick that I was not fluent in Spanish. So after that experience, how do I know if I am fluent in Spanish? Well, one reason is the way that I think. I think a lot faster than I did 2 and 3 years ago. And now this is very important for the way that I speak. Have you ever heard before you want to be able to speak without thinking? Well, for me, it's actually the reverse. So I speak a lot faster now than I've ever had before because I think in Spanish a lot faster. So instead of thinking about what I would want to say in Spanish for 5 to 15 seconds, now it's a lot more instantaneous. Now it's a lot easier to hear and understand a native Spanish speaker and then think about what I want to say in response, and then to actually say what I am thinking as well. And of course, I still have to think a lot before I say something in Spanish, but there's still a night and day difference in between how fast I was thinking 3 years ago versus now. I remember the days where I would study a lot of words and phrases that I was learning in movies and TV shows and books and music before I would have a conversation with a Spanish speaker. If I was going to a Mexican market or if I was going to a Latino restaurant or something like that, I would always review for a while just so I could prepare myself for what I was going to be hearing and how I would respond to a question that I would receive. Even after all of that, when I was actually in the conversation, I basically forgot all that vocabulary that I was reviewing beforehand. And it was very difficult for me to think on the spot about what I actually wanted to say if I got asked a question. But now, after thinking so much in Spanish for the past few years, it's a lot easier for me to just have spontaneous conversations with Spanish speakers. My overall communication skills in the Spanish language is another way that I know that I am fluent in Spanish. So it's not just the fact that I can think faster and that I can speak Spanish faster, but it's the fact that I can express myself so much easier now in Spanish. When beforehand I wasn't really doing that. I sounded very monotone. I wasn't expressing really any emotions that much. I was mostly just trying to figure out, oh, does the noun go here? Does the verb go here? Just fumbling over my words, mostly trying to figure out how to connect sentences together and making sure that the Spanish speaker I was talking to could understand me. But now it's not the same way. Now I can be able to create sentences a lot easier, a lot smoother, but then also express anger, express sadness, express happiness, and all these different things. Be able to tell jokes and laugh and things like that. So it's a lot easier for me to communicate in this way and not just sounding and looking like a robot. This is also very important to me because I've had to learn how to communicate in Spanish all on my own. This wasn't a skill that I learned in my Spanish classes, really in high school or middle school or college, but I've had to work on it so much over the past few years after a lot of conversations in Spanish in person and then also through language exchange applications too. So this has not been an overnight thing. This has taken a lot of time and a lot of dedication as well. It was just very challenging for me to even tell a story to a Spanish speaker right after I came out of college. I did not know how to conjugate the verbs in the past. And even a year later in 2020, it was still very challenging for me to be able to tell stories. But now I'm able to tell stories a lot easier. And now, since I have developed this skill to be able to speak Spanish for numerous hours, my conversations with native Spanish speakers are a lot more in depth, and I can have conversations about many different topics and not just a few not just for a few topics for a few minutes, like 5 or 10 minutes. But I can have conversations about different topics for hours. The amount of knowledge that I have about Spanish grammar is another way that I know that I am fluent in Spanish. Now, this doesn't mean just because I know a lot more about Spanish grammar, but it is the way that I am using this grammar when I am speaking. Because again, right after college, I had a lot of vocabulary and I had a lot of grammar in my head because that's mostly all I studied. I wrote a lot and I studied a whole bunch of grammar rules. But then when it came to actually communicating in Spanish, when it came to speaking in Spanish and having conversations with Spanish speakers, all that was really jumbled up and I had no idea how to actually connect words together. I didn't know how to make very comprehensible sentences. So when I would speak, it didn't make much sense. But after reading in Spanish a lot and watching movies and TV shows in Spanish, listening to music in Spanish, and then, of course, all of the amazing conversations that I've had in Spanish with Spanish speakers, all of this grammar I was able to actually see and hear in context. That just made it so much easier for me to be able to take everything that I was consuming and hearing and then to use it when I was speaking, so I wasn't getting so mixed up with the grammar that I had that I was trying to put all together. I could just follow what I was actually hearing and consuming. If I was going to be traveling to a Spanish speaking country in the next few days here and I could only speak Spanish and not English at all, I know that I could do that and I would not have a whole bunch of fear at all. And this is one way that I know that I am fluent in Spanish as well. I can say with confidence that I would be able to get around just fine just using Spanish, making purchases, going to the store, going to a bank, going to restaurants, talking to the employees at my hotel and things like that, all in Spanish, because I've already done this before when I went to the Dominican Republic. Now, I am not saying that I'm not going to have any issues with trying to comprehend the person who I'm talking to, because we all know from my other videos that when I went to the Dominican Republic, I definitely had a lot of issues when it came to communication. But at the very least, I know that I still will be able to use the Spanish that I know to be able to resolve a problem. Or if I don't know what someone is saying, I can keep asking a lot of different questions to be able to figure out what that Spanish speaker is trying to say to me. And I would say, if all else fails, I can still write in Spanish too. So it really wouldn't be that challenging. Now, I do want to add that I don't say that I'm fluent in Spanish because I have taken a lot of examinations to be able to measure my fluency level, or that I have gotten a lot of A's when I was in my Spanish classes, because I definitely was not getting many A's in my Spanish classes. And I'm not saying that I'm fluent in Spanish because I know 500 words or 500 verbs or anything like that, or that I know so much grammar, or that I don't make any mistakes and that I speak perfectly, because as you know, I do make a lot of mistakes when I speak Spanish still. And even with confidence, I'm not saying that I'm fluent in Spanish because I am very confident. I feel confident when I'm speaking, because even today, I still feel very nervous when I'm having conversations with Spanish speakers. Basically, every single time that I meet a new Spanish speaker, I still feel very nervous when I'm having that first little interaction. I still am not always very confident in my speaking abilities. Even with my friends, I even get nervous when I'm speaking Spanish sometimes. But that is a conversation for another time. And I really wanted to share that with you because for me, I don't really care that much about numbers and letters. So if I am C2 or B2 or C1 or whatever those proficiency levels are, I don't care too much about just having a whole bunch of vocabulary, 1,000 or 5,000 words. I don't really care about those things. For me, what's important, what helps me know that I am fluent in Spanish is knowing that I'm able to communicate and express myself with Spanish speakers, and know that I can actually see the progression of my communication skills. So starting in my college Spanish classes, when I wasn't having conversations with Spanish speakers at all, only with my classmates, but only for a few minutes in class and then during my homework assignments, to being able to have conversations basically with mostly any Spanish speaker that I come in contact with, and being able to go to a Spanish speaking country and just use Spanish. So now you know how I know that I am fluent in Spanish. If you would like to support my channel, you can donate on my Buy Me a Coffee page, and the link is in the description box of this video. Hasta luego.